you everybody for joining me today to learn about the latest features from Fliplet and an exclusive preview of our upcoming roadmap. Turn on my slides, make sure that you can see them all. So I'm Ian Broom, I'm the CEO of Fliplet. I'm also one of the founders, and today I'll be talking through a short and brief Fliplet overview because I believe most of the people on today's call do know about Fliplet already. Then I'll be talking through some upcoming app templates, apps and studio features that have been launched or are coming out very soon, and then a bit of a preview about what we're planning for 2021. This is all very much open for discussion with our customers. So please, as you go through, if anything catches your fancy and you'd like to know more information about it, please just follow up. Due to the number of items in today's presentation and also wanting to allow you to do something else this afternoon, I've kept all the descriptions quite brief. But yeah, we welcome dialogue. So please get in touch if you have any questions. So really briefly, I'm sure that everybody now knows how to use Zoom exceptionally well, but just in case you're wondering how we're going to use Zoom today, if you have any questions, just type them into the chat. My colleague Chris will be reviewing the chat questions and getting them ready for the Q&A that we'll have towards the end of today's call. Please stay on mute. And turn off your camera. I think by default, Zoom will have turned your camera off and put you on mute. So yeah, if you could stay that way, that would be very helpful and allow us to stick to the agenda. So a quick overview of Fliplet. Fliplet is a prefab app creation tool. This enables you to very quickly build apps with or without code. It has a broad set of drag and drop features, enabling people to very rapidly produce highly functioning apps. Fliplet enables apps to be published and distributed through a whole range of platforms, including public app stores and enterprise app stores, as well as web apps, and even file download if you don't have an app store available to you. And Fliplet takes care of all the infrastructure. So we ensure that your data is safe, secure, we make sure it's backed up, we make sure it's available. Without further ado, I'm going to dive straight into an update on our app templates. So for those of you who aren't aware, our app templates are pre-built apps available inside Fliplet Studio. We have been working very hard this quarter on not only updating some of our existing app templates, but also producing new ones. So the most popular app template at the moment is our Return to Office app. It's been incredibly popular with customers, by far the most popular app template that we've probably ever built, and it has been consumed in a 6-month window. If you haven't had a play with that yet, I encourage you to go and have a bit of a tinker. It's available in Fliplet Studio right now. We're actively working on version 2, which is taking a lot of the feedback we've received from customers and polishing out some of the issues or bugs, also making some of the features a little bit easier for end users to understand. That is due in October. We've also been working very hard on producing an entirely new marketing template now. I did a separate webinar on this, but for those of you who missed it, I've got some more information about that app template on the next couple of slides. Crisis response or dawn raid apps. So this is another app template we're very excited about. What we're doing is we're taking the app templates that we've built, the apps that were built for a number of customers in relation to Dawn Raid, and we're evolving that concept. So we've got some incredibly exciting features that if your organization has a Dawn Raid app, I'm sure you'll be interested to consider adding them to your existing Dawn Raid app. And if you don't have a Dawn Raid app, then this might be something that encourages you to try it. Of course, what we've realized is that Dawn Raids aren't the only place that you can use this app template. You can also use it for just general crisis response. So this could be pandemics as an example of a recent crisis. It can also be related to privacy. It could also be related to litigation. There's lots of different ways that you can use this app. It really is kind of a first responder type app. And I'll go into a bit more detail about that later in the presentation. We've got a number of updates that we're making to our event app. Which we've been surprised to see quite a few people are still using, even though the number of events isn't very high at the moment. What we've seen quite a few people doing is using it more as a program management app. So for example, if a customer is running a program internally, maybe for graduates or things like this, they will take the event app and they'll use a lot of the same features that are in it to build out an app to support, say, a 4-week or an 8-week program. So that's a really interesting evolution. We've also just started planning for our virtual event template. We've had a number of customers inquire about virtual event apps built with Fliplet. We are really excited about the opportunity to produce a virtual event template, but we're also quite wary that people are exposed to so many Zoom meetings and so many events online nowadays, so many webinars like this one, that if you're going to produce a virtual event app, it really needs to be good. So we're doing quite a lot of analysis at the moment around what do we think is really going to make the Fliplet virtual event template stand out from the crowd and deliver really high value to our customers. So keep your ears open. I believe we're going to be running a webinar about the virtual event app in October to share what we're planning on doing. And slightly longer term, we've been planning a compliance management app for some time, and we also have a workflow app, which is really going to be built off the back of the enhanced crisis response or dawn raid features, which will enable organizations to very rapidly produce a workflow that runs on top of Fliplet to help them with a number of different scenarios. So, as I promised, let me talk about our upcoming marketing template. So, the marketing template is designed to assist to share content, retain users with a number of interactive features, and ultimately encourage inquiries to the organization that produces it. Marketing apps are very popular at Fliplet. They've always been very popular. We have customers producing them, I would say, at least once a month. And what we've really tried to do with this updated marketing template, because we've had one for quite a long time, is really include all of our interactive features that we believe are relevant to the marketing team or the BD team and put them all into a single place. Now, I just want to be clear, I don't expect customers to utilize every single feature of this marketing template. That is not the point. The point of it being in a template is it's a one-stop shop where you can browse all of the features that might be valuable in your marketing template and then pick the ones that work for you. So I'm going to focus just briefly today on 3. So the first feature is the analyze content. And the analyze content is quite an exciting feature because what it enables you to do is take an existing data set. So in the case of the data set in the screenshots you can see, I took country information about tax and economy, things like GDP, birth rate, population, as you can see in the screenshots. And what I did is I built this really big spreadsheet. I think it's got over 200 countries listed in it, or 200 regions listed in it, and it's got at least 30 or 40 columns. So it's quite large. It's very, very difficult to work with in Excel. And then what I did is I copied it into a data source in Fliplet. And then what the developers have built for this feature is the screens that allow you to search and analyze this data are completely dynamic. So in the case of analyzing the content or this content, the first thing that the app does is it gets all of the columns and dynamically builds a search screen based on those columns. When you select the columns that you want and you click next, it then grabs every single record, or in this case, it's picking up every single country name or jurisdiction, and it's then giving me a list of all the jurisdictions. Now it's grouping those by continent so that the list is manageable. So basically I can go through, I can select every country in Europe, for example, or I can cherry pick a couple. And then I click next and it produces this screen. So this produces a series of cards that lay out horizontally. So as you can see, I can see Luxembourg and Switzerland side by side. And it's responsive. So on mobile, it shows me just a little bit of the next card, but on desktop, it's able to show me more of each card. And of course, Fliplet being Fliplet, the width of each card can be customized. So if you have narrow data, like number information, we could probably fit a few more cards on the screen. If instead you have text in the form of paragraphs, we can actually change these cards so that they have accordions on them, so that you see all of the information, but it's compacted and you have to expand it in order to be able to read it, which again keeps the user interface manageable. The other exciting thing about analyze content is it's got the ability for you to share your results. So you can easily say, hey, this is interesting, click share, and send the share link over to a colleague. So they can come directly into your results. They don't have to go through the search screen. They don't even have to log into the app. They get taken directly into the results and are able just to see what you've provided them. You've got save results, which enables you to save them to your profile so you can very quickly go and load them again. Against each entry, you've got the ability to email a copy of it to yourself, and you can also click Find Experts, which is really good in professional services or law firms. Clicking Find Experts takes you straight into the experts or lawyers directory and pre-filters it by the name of that country. So if you upload all of your experts globally, this app will basically recommend the right people for Luxembourg to them. So coming back to my original explanation of what's the marketing template for, that is very much one of the features that we've added to encourage inquiries, the Find Experts button. Okay, moving on. So we've got two other features I'm going to show you, the assessment and the benchmark. Okay, so the assessment feature. Now, this is very similar to a quiz, we realized when we've been building assessments, with the key difference being that as you go through the series of questions and you answer them, what the results show you is different in a quiz to an assessment. In a quiz, you get a score typically, and you might get told maybe some information about each of your individual questions. In an assessment, it's generally not as simple. So in this assessment, it's a tax assessment. I go through and answer a series of questions. Based on the answers to those questions, the app then tells me if I need to complete a tax return or not. So the algorithm to determine, well, if you answered yes to this question, but no to this question, no to this question, therefore you don't have to complete a tax return, is quite different to the simplicity of, say, something like a quiz, where the result would just be, this is your score. We're really excited about assessments because I think assessments can be applied to a huge number of scenarios, such as, should I litigate? Do I need to complete a tax return? What should I do if I'm told about a privacy breach? There's lots of assessment reasons. And moving on, I'll just wrap up. An assessment similar to the analyze content has email your results, request assistance, which sends an inquiry through to the right part of the organization that produced the app, basically telling them Ian Broom has done your assessment. He's been told he needs to complete a tax return and he's requesting assistance, AKA a lead is generated by the app. And then, of course, you've got the ability to share online. Now, sharing online, it may or may not be appropriate. Again, in the form of a marketing app, it may be appropriate to share the outcome. Alternatively, it may not. And if it's not appropriate, you can always turn these features off. So that's the assessment. Now let's talk a little bit about the benchmarking. The first thing about benchmarking is you'll notice the interface looks very similar to assessment, and that's intentionally done so that when customers are modifying the marketing template, they have to learn how to modify this style of screen. But once they've learned how to modify this style of screen, it's very quick for them to therefore build an assessment, a benchmark, a quiz, a decision tree. They all operate of a very similar design. Okay, so the benchmark is the same as a quiz or an assessment, with the exception that after you answer each question, it tells you how you compare anonymously to all of the other users of the app. So in this case, it's asking me, am I a company director? And I think I said no. And it's saying, well, you've said no. And the two other anonymous users of this app, one of them said yes, one of them said no. So I'm therefore able to sit there and say, oh, okay, the majority of the other people taking this benchmark are similar to me. There's only one person that is not similar. The benchmark feature supports not only any type of question you would want to put into it, but it also supports any type of data visualization, such as a chart. You can also analyze the answer and provide a written description if that's what you would prefer. In our experience, most customers have preferred to put in a bar chart, a column chart, a pie chart, maybe a line chart. And yeah, this has been very good at giving people very rapid feedback. They provide us with data. The app instantly gives them something that they can hopefully use. So, so they're three of the features that are coming out in the new marketing template. Other aspects of the marketing template, so we're optimizing how the template gets loaded with content. So previously with Fliplet templates, you've sometimes had spreadsheets, but a lot of the times you've actually had to load the content via admin screens or forms directly in the app. Fliplet has evolved our process. So not only are we providing a spreadsheet template for all of the structured data for the marketing template, but we're also going to provide Word document templates for all of the interactive features. So for example, let's say that you have interest from a stakeholder to do an assessment or create an assessment in the app. The problem is you now need them to provide information for the assessment. And that means you have to explain to them what format you need the information in, best practices, etc. We have produced Word templates that enable you to just send the Word template over to the stakeholder and say, hey, you've asked for the assessment feature, read this Word template, fill it in, send it back to me. I'll then be able to load your content in very quickly and give you the assessment that works the way that we need it to. So we think that the Word templates are going to be a really, really popular feature, mainly because so often marketing teams or IT teams are involved in the creation of apps, but they are not the people who provide the content. Okay, data load. So as I've already mentioned, once you upload data into the Analyze feature, it automatically builds its search and analysis interface. We think this is going to make it really fast to take existing data sets and build really interactive and beautiful apps on top of it that aren't overwhelming or complicated to use. The app's also going to include some built-in promotional features. So one of the things that we've noticed customers have struggled with is they have wanted to effectively promote their new app, but struggled to produce good-looking emails. They've struggled to convey succinctly what the end user should do to effectively engage with the app. They've struggled to communicate the benefit of the features. They may have focused on the functionality instead of the benefits to the end user. So we are building in a new communication admin UI. This is only for app admins, and it enables them to invite one or many people into the app. It also isn't restricted just to email, but it also supports SMS and push notifications. So it can also be used to remind users, we've recently updated our Analyze content. 50% of the content has now been updated. We recommend you go in and rerun your searches again. And you can now just very quickly send that notification out to your users via the communication admin UI. A lot of the admin screens in Fliplet will also automatically send notifications now based on users' preferences. This includes things like news, reference contents, events, etc. So when you upload news or events, you can tell the app, I want you to go and tell people about it, and it will automatically send a notification to them. We believe that this will dramatically increase engagement and also give a very, very simple way that when people are uploading new content, they can easily notify other people that it's available and ready for them to look at. I've already mentioned, but the app will save results. So it'll save the results from the assessments, the benchmarks, the quizzes, the decision trees. You can save your search results. We believe that this increases the app's personalization and benefit to people who want to use it as a reference tool. A lot of marketing teams have wanted to be able to import their RSS content. We have now added a screen that allows you to do that. So you just put in your RSS feed URL and you tell it which data source to import to. You click a button and it does the import. It automatically skips duplicates. So there's no risk that if you run the import twice, you're going to end up with duplicate content. It makes kind of rapidly loading existing organization news into the app really fast. And it's worth pointing out that quite a few of these features at the moment are what we consider to be low code. That means that you will need some technical capabilities to be able to use them. Now, the good news is most of them are really just HTML. You just need a little bit of HTML knowledge. Our intention is in Q4 to actually replace the features with some new interfaces that we're building, which will in turn mean that it actually goes back to being no code. But until then, it's a low code. Well, some of these advanced features are low code. Okay, Moving on to other things that Fliplet's recently launched. So apps produced by Fliplet have been upgraded so that they work with Android 11 and iOS 14. It's worth noting that we have found a minor iOS 14 issue. Basically, when you visit an app after copying something into the clipboard, your apps built with Fliplet will access the clipboard. They don't do anything with the content, so there's no security issue here, but iOS 14 now notifies users when apps are accessing the clipboard as a security precaution. So we have resolved that issue. It is, I believe it's going live very soon. And in order for customers to basically resolve this warning in their app, they will need to update, they will need to rebuild via Fliplet Studio. So if you've got any live apps at the moment, it's probably worth noting down that over the next couple of weeks, you probably want to rebuild them. I recommend rebuilding apps every 6 months anyway, just because it enables your apps to automatically pick up the latest security and bug fixes that we implement. But it's particularly important to be cautious when major releases of Android and iOS come out. We're currently in the final stages of testing push notification for web apps. There's a couple of really exciting things about push notification for web apps. So the first is, if you have the tab closed for a Fliplet web app, but you have subscribed to notifications, your browser will still deliver the notification. So it's the equivalent of you not having the app running on your phone. You don't need the tab open in Chrome in order to receive the notification. We think that this is going to lead to a really significant increase in the ability for push notifications to encourage users to come back into the app. It'll also mean that we're now able to offer a similar level of push functionality on your computer as we do on your phone. And more customers, particularly in relation to return to office, have been prioritizing using push notifications more and more to make sure that people know what's going on and not depending on email or other kind of traditional forms, because people may be on the move, people may not have their computer with them. And then finally, we've done quite a bit of work in the last quarter improving our accessibility in line with the web content accessibility guidelines. So for those people who are web developers or have done web projects on the phone, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. The World Wide Web Content Accessibility Guidelines are a set of standards that increase the ease of people with disabilities to access your web pages. We've been a bit cautious about including accessibility features in our web apps, only because a lot of the accessibility features are really designed for web pages, which are typically static, content oriented, etc. Fliplet apps are generally much more interactive. So we're doing our best. We've started. And if that's of interest to you, get in touch. We can tell you which features we've included the accessibility capabilities in. And yeah, hopefully your users find them helpful. We've included quite a few studio updates in the last 6 months. So the first is that Fliplet Studio can now support SSO, or single sign-on. What this means is that all of your staff can use their corporate usernames and passwords in order to authenticate with Studio. This is helpful because if a user leaves your organization and you disable their Active Directory account, it also means they will no longer be able to access Fliplet Studio. And that in turn not only reduces risk, but also reduces the amount of administration IT has to do turning off old accounts. We've also included a new organization sign-up screen. So what this means is if you want to enable anybody in your organization to sign up without having to be invited, you can give them the organization sign-up screen URL, and it'll allow them to, as long as they pass a certain as long as their email address has a certain whitelisted domain in it, for example, company.com, it will allow them to sign up on their own. The benefit again of this is you don't have to have users being invited, and it enables them to self-sign up. So if you were doing, say, a Fliplet internal training session and you wanted everybody to set up their own account, the first thing you would do is give them your organizational sign-up screen. They would register themselves, and it can also be integrated with a single sign-on. So after they sign up, they then have to authenticate against, say, Active Directory. We've also included a new admin feature called Request to Publish. What this means is that an organizational admin can state that nobody is allowed to launch an app without their approval. And what this means is that somebody who is not an organizational admin, when they're building an app and they get ready to publish it, they can click a button that says request access to publish this app from our organizational admins. Fliplet then emails the organizational admin and says, Ian Broom has requested to launch this app. And then the organizational admin can go into Fliplet, they can review the app. If they're happy, they can enable publishing rights, and then that app is able to be published. It's also a great way to stop people in your organization launching apps without understanding the kind of maintenance obligations that they would have. We've updated our password policy to enable organizational admins to mandate two-factor authentication, because we're aware two-factor authentication, particularly in today's remote working environment, is becoming more critical. And our security components, such as our login component, have been upgraded, that if they are added into an app, but the app doesn't have appropriate security rules configured to restrict access to that security feature, a warning is presented. We believe that this will decrease the number of apps that have incorrectly configured security rules being launched. And in Q4, we have a number of features that are really close to being launched, so I thought I'd tell you about them. One is we're going to be asking all users to accept an end-user licensing agreement. We will notify you 2 weeks before we implement this feature so that you can review it. I just want to reassure you, it is not going to be anywhere near as technical and complicated as, say, our terms of use. It's really just explaining what the end user is responsible for. It's kind of like a cut-down version. So keep an eye out for an email that mentions that. We have data source configuration and security rules. So we've increased our ability to, we've added some new features that enable you to configure data sources and security rules. I'm actually going to go through them in a bit more detail in a moment. We're working very hard on helper components. So this is a new developer framework, but the result will be that we're able to dramatically accelerate how quickly we can produce new features. And this is the feature I was referring to earlier when I said the marketing template has some low code capabilities at the moment, but once we have helper components, they will actually replace the low code capabilities. So we're very excited about that. Next, we've got trash coming, which I think will just help people to kind of solve a couple of scary scenarios on their own. If you delete something accidentally, you'll be able to restore it. And we're also going to be launching version control for screens very soon, and data sources, but in particular screens, which means if you make a mistake, you can roll a screen back. So let me tell you about another feature we've added into Studio, which is the organization dashboard. So this is a dashboard that enables organization admins to see Studio and app usage. Now, if you've been lucky enough to be on a call with our account management team recently, they've probably shown you this because it makes their lives a lot easier when talking with our customers about, well, what has their organization been doing with Fliplet recently? But for those of you who haven't, I encourage you to log in and click the organization dashboard button, which is on your Create app screen or where you see the list of apps. It's in the top right-hand corner. And it enables you to review all Studio and app usage. It enables you to see user activity. It enables you to see app activity, and it enables you to drill down into the corresponding app or user if you want to make any changes or learn more about what that user or app has been doing. So we think that this is really becoming quite a powerful feature. Not only does it make it very easy for users to see what their colleagues have been doing in Fliplet, but it also makes it very clear in a single screen how much usage you are getting out of Fliplet. As I previously mentioned, we've added in some new data source configuration and security options. So the data source security rules control access to the data sources. So previously we had data source security, but it had some flaws. It didn't get copied automatically when you copied data sources. And it was quite complicated to configure. It was an API-driven feature. So we've now enhanced it so that it's a completely user interface driven. For those of you who are familiar with database security privileges or grant, as I think the feature is called in SQL Server, our data source security is very similar with some enhancements that make it even more appropriate for apps. So firstly, you can set a detailed set of security rules, such as read, write, update, and delete. So you can be very granular. It can be based on user data. So for example, only logged in users can access this data source, or only users of type partner can access this data source. The data source rules can span multiple apps, which means you don't have to keep reconfiguring the rules every time you connect a new app to the same data source. You can tell it to exclude specific fields. So basically never ever return the password field back to the app. The password is only to be accessible, say, via Fliplet Studio and on the server. There are also lots of other reasons why you might want to exclude specific fields, such as optimizing the amount of data being returned. So if somebody's running a search and it's a really large data set, maybe skip all of the fields that have lots of information in them to speed up the speed that the results are sent to the user. You can also mandate query parameters. So for example, you can only access this data source if you query it and you're specifying a username. What this does is it enables you to add even more security, because basically you're now able to say, well, if they don't know the username when they're running the query, then they won't get the right results. This is very useful when you've got a multi-tenanted solution, or a solution where multiple users are sharing it, but their data should all be private. This query parameters or query requirements feature allows you to say, well, like, they must know their user ID. And if they don't know their user ID, then they literally get no data back. And their user ID might be something you generate so that it can't be guessed instead of their email address. One of the other great things is you can toggle the rules on and off for testing. So if you think that a security rule is creating a problem, you can just quickly turn it off, run a quick test to see, and turn it back on. Rules are immediately applied, so you don't have to go and publish the app to get these rules to take effect. And there are a suite of templated rules available. So when you click the Add New Rule button, it gives you the ability to use blank or a selection of pre-built templates. We recommend new customers who are new to this feature go and have a play with those templates, because they can really help to demonstrate the power of the system. Okay, list from data source. So probably, other than the form component, our most popular component in Fliplet. And it's a component for displaying, searching, and filtering data from data sources. So one of the things that we've enhanced in the last few months is we've improved the appearance settings, which means customers now have more fine-grained control over how the list from data source looks. And we've also included the ability for people to mention each other via the comments. If I mention another user, they receive a push notification, potentially a text message or an email, depending on their user preferences. And there's a link included in that message that sends them back to that particular screen to read the comments. So this is a feature that's slowly gaining popularity, and we will be enhancing mentions over the next quarter as well. In Q4, you can expect some really exciting features that I think will significantly help users to get the most out of lists built with a list from data source. So the first is the ability to pre-filter by user data. What this means is that users will, app creators will be able to say that a list from data source only shows data as long as it correlates to that user. For example, it was created by them. The other filter options we're going to add in a filter by date, which will be an individual date or a date range, or number, which works the same way. So you can say, it's equal 3, or it's between 3 and 7. We again think that this will really help. We've had a number of customers request this over the years. Some of them have custom built it into their app. We're now including it as a standard feature, which you'll just be able to turn on. We're also going to be including some sorting features for end users. So if you want to resort the list, you can do that in real time. And if multiple files or multiple images have been associated with a record in a data source, the list from data source will now show all of the files and all of the images. So we think that this is going to really help people when they're uploading multiple images or multiple files against an entry. We've also been busy working on forms, our first or second most popular component, as you may recall. Forms are the data capture features within apps. So there's a couple of really exciting things. The first thing is you can now add explanations to fields. So I've included a screenshot of the field configuration interface here. You can see here that in the description field, I put in 3 to 5 word description of your article. And you can see here in the preview, you get a small description of this just appearing under the field title in the form. So this should make it very easy and very fast for people to include explanations directly into their forms without having to resort to custom code. And also you've got the ability to hide fields. So you can see here, you can tick this option if you don't want this field to appear, which is very useful if what you want to do is hide this field, but then have a default value, which is kind of a status. So every time a record's created, say the status should be new, you can basically have a status field, you can set its default value to new, and then you can hide it, meaning that it will always be set to that value. In Q4, we've got a whole suite of exciting features coming. So we've got date fields that will automatically update all the time. So for example, if you want to put a last updated on date field in, you can say always update this to the latest date, and basically the form will always replace it, the date value. We're also going to enable you to pre-fill fields with user data. So if you want to put the username in the username field and have it automatically and then hide the field, you will be able to do that very soon. We're going to be retiring form templates from the form builder component. Very few people utilize these, and what we've realized is screen templates are a much better, more visual way to share examples of how forms can be included in screens. So we're going to be retiring that feature, which will slightly speed up the form builder, but also reduce one step when creating a new form. And we're going to shift kind of the templates that are in there, such as survey or inquiry form, and we're going to shift them to being screen templates. Mentions are going to be coming to the rich text field. We've been working on that for the last quarter. We're just basically polishing the upgrade of that feature, because it will result in a completely new rich text editor being included inside the form builder. And you can see here, this is what the form builder looks like when you've now selected multiple images. It kind of gives you little thumbnails and enables you to remove them if needed. Okay, so I promised that I was going to give you some insights into what we've planned for 2020. So as I mentioned, please give us any feedback on these ideas. It's really useful getting feedback from customers because it helps us to prioritize them. And none of these ideas have a set delivery date yet, because we're keen to hear from our customers to determine what they believe is important. So firstly, app templates. So I've mentioned the crisis response template. This will help produce an app that supports customers and clients to manage emergencies and contact experts. So it's going to include some checklists that can be personalized via the app and then shared with other users. The checklists can have assigned users or assigned roles to them. So if I complete my task and the next task is somebody in the InfoSec team, then the app will automatically notify the InfoSec team you have items waiting for you that are assigned to you. It's going to be able to accommodate internal and external users. So what I mean by this is, if you build a customer-facing app and you want them to include some of your colleagues when, for example, they're suffering a dawn raid, you can actually include yourself as a user in their checklist. So we think that this will be very powerful and enable a new level of collaboration between people from different organizations. The quiz, assessment, benchmark, and other marketing app features that I mentioned earlier can all be included in the crisis response app or the dawn raid app to further create interactive capabilities. The next is the virtual event. So this is quite high level at the moment. As I mentioned, we're still finalizing it, but our current plans are that it'll have an agenda linked with Zoom, which will be used to help users who are using the app find the right Zoom details at the right point in time and connect to the right session. We're going to be including a onboarding checklist to help users prepare for virtual events. So this could be make sure you've got Zoom, make sure you've got an appropriate headset, make sure that you've installed the mobile app on your mobile phone, make sure that you're using this on your computer. Anything else that we want them to do before the event to make sure that when the event starts, they're not having any problems. And we're going to include what we're calling up next functionality. And the purpose of this is to encourage users to stick around for the next session in the virtual event. Because obviously in a physical event, I go to a physical space, I have to put quite a lot of effort into leaving. Whereas a virtual event, I just close the tab if I want to go back to a different task. So what we're going to be adding is up next capability, which will encourage users to pay attention to what the value that they're going to get by sticking around and make it really easy to kind of switch from this Zoom call to the next Zoom call, or this Zoom call to the next thing that the organizer would like you to do. Data management. I've mentioned this to a couple of customers. I'm really excited about what data management features we're going to be including next year. At the moment, we're calling them virtual data sources, and these are data sources that can support joins across multiple data sources. So it's almost like, if for those of you who know SQL Server, it's a bit like a stored procedure. You basically get to save a query. And we're also going to enable virtual data sources to execute code. So in this means that they'll be able to execute API calls. So for example, you could have a virtual data source that's getting the latest weather information from weather.com. Fliplet is also exploring Fliplet becoming what we're calling a data proxy. What this means is that Fliplet server becomes kind of a repeater to your on-premise data stores, but we do not store the data. At the moment, Fliplet is generally given a copy of the data, and often that data is then encrypted if it's sensitive. This will enable Fliplet to just become a thoroughfare for the data. So the app will request the data from the Fliplet server will call to the data integration service, the data integration service will get the data directly from your server and pass it all the way back to the app, and vice versa. If the app sends data back, that data can be pushed to your on-prem SQL server. Basically, Fliplet just becomes the conduit. And we're also going to be working on, and this will start in Q4, a data management UI upgrade. We believe this is really important. More and more of our customers are bringing large data sets that require management inside Fliplet Studio, and we're aware that the current data source manager lacks a little bit when you have a really complicated data source. So we're intending to upgrade it and replace it with something that's more appropriate. And then finally, we've got a couple of enhancements that we're discussing internally as well. So the data integration service, for those people who don't know, is our little piece of on-premise software that allows on-premise servers like SQL Server to connect to Fliplet and allows them to kind of both stay in sync intelligently. So the data integration service, we're intending to upgrade it so that any files that are uploaded through the app to Fliplet then get pushed down to a file share or a shared folder on premise through the data integration service. At the moment, the data integration service supports data going up to the server, but it doesn't support files getting sent from the server down to a shared drive. And then the other thing that we've been considering is making the data integration service, instead of a Node.js application, which requires installation and maintenance and things like this, we've actually been discussing whether or not we should make a Docker image, or this is a containerized version. What this means is we just give this to customers and they just start it, and it's a completely virtualized, isolated environment, which is very easy to apply security to. And what it does is it runs in a very isolated fashion. So if you've got any ideas around, particularly if you'd like data integration service as a Docker image, get in touch. We'd love to chat to you. So we're also working on many more changes. This, pretty much bang on 45 minutes, but we've got forms that are getting more upgrades. List from data source is currently undergoing a big set of analysis to figure out what's the future of that feature look like. We've got new screen templates, new screen management capabilities planned for next year, studio onboarding improvements, which basically means less training for your colleagues when they get introduced to Fliplet, because Fliplet will onboard them in a better way. And app build UI improvements to reduce errors and technical knowledge, making the creation of mobile apps and the maintenance of mobile apps easier. So that's everything that I've got covered. I can see that there's quite a few chat messages. Is there anything that you would like to pose to me first, Chris?
I've got a few for you, yeah. So assessments definitely have got people talking. So first one is for the assessment feature, can you have more than one or two final answers? So i.e. you might have a rating of 1 to 5 or a high, medium, low risk score.
Yeah, so the benefit in its current form of being low code means you can literally do anything you want. So if you wanted it to be, a rating, or you wanted, say, different, the information that's being collected to be a scale instead of a yes, no, or it's literally the world's our oyster. And I'm excited about that question because it's sparking a whole bunch of other ideas in my mind.
Cool, thank you. So let's stay on assessments for a minute then. So will there be a simple way to merge the result of an assessment into a document, i.e. a Word or a PDF file?
Yeah, so Fliplet does have some Word doc generation features, and we've had PDF creation for quite a while. We could definitely do that. And I guess what that would translate into is possibly being a certificate or some form of formalized recommendation at the end. So yeah, that's definitely possible.
Cool, thank you. Let's get off assessments for a minute. So can the agenda be linked with other conferencing apps such as Microsoft Teams?
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, the reason why Zoom, I think, is so popular is because it has a web version as well as a software version. I think if your audience is all clued up and has the Teams app, or you want maybe in the new checklist to tell your attendees you have to have Teams software, then yeah, you can use Teams. It really doesn't matter. I mean, most of these conferencing software, it's all just triggered now through a URL that comes on the invite. So that URL is what you'd put into the agenda, and you just click join, and it would open a new tab and then use whatever software. Or in the case of Zoom, which is why we emphasize that, it wouldn't open a new tab. It would literally open the embedded version to keep the user in the virtual event web app.
Superb, thank you, Ian. And just a couple more. So when you say low code and HTML knowledge, is it mainly a case of replacing certain text or cutting and pasting code segments? Or do I need to be a HTML programmer?
No, I think if you're a HTML programmer, you'd probably be disappointed at the level of knowledge you need. No, it's literally copy and paste. There are little templates in the code. The real reason why we're saying low code is you do have to use code, because we don't have a UI at the moment that allows you to kind of drag and drop, say, new questions in. But it's literally just a matter of copy paste, and you can change all of the text and the form and the charts and things like that using existing Fliplet features. It's just the creation and maybe reordering of questions and things like this where you need to drop into the HTML.
I should have made that easier for you and said, could I do it? That's copy and paste. Yes, I could.
Not sure that's representative of everybody else on the call, but sure.
Oh, okay. Last one is just going back to iOS 14. You did mention about rebuilding apps. So a question did come in about, does that mean that all existing live apps need to be rebuilt using Studio to be compatible with iOS 14?
So it's technically not an incompatibility. It's just in iOS 14, they souped up security warnings. So users know when the clipboard's being accessed, the GPS being accessed, the camera's being accessed, etc. It's pretty similar to, I think, what a lot of computers do nowadays, which is they pop up a big warning box and they say, do you want to allow this to happen? iOS has gone one step further to say, well, when it's happening, we're going to keep reminding the user. So if they're not happy about it happening, then they can go and turn it off. So it doesn't affect the functionality of the app. What we anticipate might happen is users start to submit support tickets saying, hey, I've just loaded the Return to Office app and it's saying that it's accessing my clipboard. Why? And so, as I say, it doesn't affect the functionality. It's just if you update it, the app no longer, basically the app no longer initializes the clipboard when it loads. It accesses the clipboard only when it needs to. And that's the reason why we're suggesting people update their apps.
Superb. And just one last one that's just come in then, and Dan's done it on purpose, just so I read something out that I don't understand. So thinking about collaborative development, is there anything coming up that can simplify the dev, test, and prod progression, mainly so new collaborators don't break live apps?
Yeah, so yeah, great question, Dan. So Fliplet already has a bit of a kind of a workflow system in place to solve this. There are user types against apps. So a user that can access an app on Fliplet can be a viewer, an editor, or a publisher. Publishers are the only people who can publish changes. Editors can only make changes, but they can't publish them, and viewers can only view. So my suggestion is if you're having if you've got an existing live app, but you then want work done on that app, make a copy of it and give different users access to the copy. Fliplet apps don't have internally kind of version control that goes kind of test, staging, production at the moment. There's nothing to say we couldn't add that in the future, but a lot of customers kind of appreciate the simplicity of the current process.
And I did lie, that's not the last one. We've got one more coming from my friend Nish, which is, do you have a beta program I could sign up to play with the marketing template and try the features? Great question.
Yeah, good question. So the beta, when we say beta, we're just going to make it available to everybody. What we're doing is we're just, and if people on the call are familiar with the Return to Office app, the Return to Office app was also launched into beta and anybody could go and use it. So no, you don't need to subscribe to the Fliplet beta program. Really, we just mark things as beta, but anybody with a studio account can use them.
Fantastic. And that's it for questions, Ian. Thank you.
Excellent. Cool. Well, that's very helpful. So thank you everybody for joining today's call. We've got a couple of webinars coming up over the next month. So we've got a webinar next week called Increasing the Reach of Legal Tech Through Integrations. This is all about how you can integrate Fliplet with other legal tech software. We've got a webinar about the future of the Return to Office app, which talks about what's coming up in version 2 and also subsequent versions after that. And we also have a webinar talking about our upcoming virtual event app template and sharing our vision for what that template will be able to do. So if you're interested in any of those, go to fliplet.com/webinars and sign up. And I thank you all very much for attending, and I hope you have a fantastic day.